Alright, one sport 123. Today we're going to be doing kind of a plate carrier setup video. I know there's like a million of these on social media. Sorry, I'm messing with the exposure because it's a sea of black. Um, this wouldn't be fair to do a review of this plate carrier because I've changed a lot of things about it. So it wouldn't be very representative of what this plate carrier comes with. So instead, we're going to do a video just talking about general setup and what has worked for me throughout the years. So let me preface this with saying that your plate carrier setup is going to be highly contextual to what it is that you do. So what my setup looks like, right, is going to be different from your setup. You might find some commonalities, you might find some differences, right? But this is what I found has worked for me. I've run this carrier probably for the last 7 years, I want to say, or maybe 8. It's been a while. I've had a few things that has changed, even, actually more than a few things. Actually, a lot of things have changed since the beginning of running this carrier. In the beginning, I was running steel body armor, as a lot of people do when they start out, because you don't know what you don't know. And I've since moved from that. But we'll kind of touch on the steel body armor thing here in a little bit as far as some of the experiences with that stuff, right? So before we get any further, this is a Mayflower APC, which is assault plate carrier or assaulters plate carrier. They are now known as Velocity Systems, but that's how long I've had this plate carrier. And like I said, there's been a lot of things that have changed throughout the years just from learning, right? So the format we're going to do the front first and then the back, and then we're going to go top to bottom on both. So to get started with the front of the plate carrier, so we'll start out with the shoulder pads up here. So this is HSGI, the gel shoulder pads. I found that these were extremely comfortable, especially with running like steel body armor. Like I said, as you guys know, steel body armor is like 9 pounds per plate, so you could do the math real quick. That adds up really freaking fast. The other thing that these shoulder pads worked out better for were on the Mayflower APC or the Velocity APC. If you look at any of the other reviews out there or information on it, the shoulder straps don't articulate very far out, and they're also sewn too close together. And so what ends up happening is that the inside edge of the shoulder pads here and here end up rubbing your neck raw when you're running this for any significant amount of time. And so what the gel pads help with, in addition to alleviating the pressure points, is kind of gives you some of that protection because they're wider, and they'll rub you instead of the nylon here that's on the shoulder pad, or that's on the shoulder strap, excuse me. And so you won't get your neck won't get raw. I'm not exactly the smallest guy, so I do have a larger size neck, but even I've heard the same even for the smaller guys. So that is something to look out for if you're going to shop for a plate carrier, is see what the articulation looks like on the shoulder pads, and then how far out are they on the plate bag. So moving on down, right, we have the SNS Precision Flip Light, which is like their nav board, but just for a cell phone. And if you don't need it, don't buy it. It's largely for convenience in my application of having a up high place out of the way off of my lower body where I'm running like a belt setup and stuff like that. In addition to having the capability of having your phone, which has a lot of information on it, can be used for communications depending on your applications. Just basically up here and out of the way, and that way it's quickly accessible. And you can leave it up, you can leave it down, but it's nice and accessible for you, especially being in the continental United States and in a non-military capacity, right? You use your cell phone a lot here, compared to overseas where they're mostly probably using it for ATAC and things of that nature, right? Or if you're in even a specialized unit. I'm not going to fill in the blank for all of the applications because that's not my job, right? But anyway, it's mostly convenience. If you don't need it, don't buy it, right? On the Mayflower APC, it does have an admin pouch that's behind it. I don't use them too much. I mostly just keep like a little pen light, my medical shears on on a lanyard here, so it's I can pull the medical shears out, and then it stays with my plate carrier, and then when I'm done, it retracts or whatever. It keeps it nice and out of the way. And that's kind of about it that I keep up there. Moving on down, the Mayflower does have a kangaroo pouch right here, which is you can open from this flap here. I did used to run mags in there, but I kind of went away from that just because it's too tight to the body. So, like from an accessibility standpoint, it's a little too far in the direction of not accessible and concealable. Especially once you have this, it really gets in the way of accessing your magazines. So this is just used as like a general purpose small admin pouch. So like if you want to run maps or something small like a notepad and paper in there, that way it doesn't create like a big puffy section here where your magazines sit. Then that's what I usually use it for. So before we get even lower than that, we do have the Swift Clip system, which Velocity Systems, I believe, were the first people to kind of come out with this system. I could be wrong on that, but that, if I'm not mistaken, that is the case. And then we have my Nexus PTT for my radio, and then my downlead goes into this pouch here, which we'll talk about in a second. So moving on down, before I move on, so the Nexus PTT is retained by, I think it's a PTT retainer is what they call it. I want to say it's either a Spiritus or Ferro makes it. It's basically a little nylon square that slides behind a molly section with cordage attached on both sides that are elastic, and then you just wrap it around. And it takes up less space than a lot of the times the PTT. They have the little clip or whatever, the alligator clip. It takes up less space than that, and it retains it pretty good. So moving on down on the plate carrier, right? We got the Swift Clip system, and then the corresponding Velcro for attaching things. I really like this setup because what it allows me to do is I can run this slick. I can run this as scaled up as I want to, as long as you have the corresponding placards or chest rigs. And to touch on scalability, like for most people, I don't think they legitimately have a need for it. This is not to say that we don't have a need for this in the market, but I feel like a lot of people don't really build it out how it's intended to be built out. And so they'll end up paying for this scalability feature, but not really actually using it. When like most of the time they'll just run like 3 AR mags or something like that. They won't run really any other type of placard setup. And it's like, okay, well then at that point, do you really need to spend the extra money on all this stuff? Or is it just kind of like a nice to have? And then with that being said, right, so like before we move on, so with the scalability, I do have the Spiritus Microfight, and this has the AXL admin zipper up in the front. And a lot of people don't know this, but you can get it to work. The Haley Strategic MP2 or 3 or whatever, the little Kydex magazine retentions, you can actually get them to work in the Spiritus rig. And then you still need the elastic magazine thing that normally comes with it, and that way you get some Kydex retention. There are also other options out there of what you can do to get it work, but that's what I'm using. And then this is my Theorem cell vaults on the sides for extra batteries, and then forgot who makes the tourniquet thing here, but Spiritus or Ferro, one of them. And then you just kind of like loop it through the grommet holes for the tourniquet retention. And then over here, if I wanted to scale up even more, I have the Haley Strategic D3CRX, I think it is. Whatever their 4 M4 mags, 4 pistol mags, and 2 admin pouches are. Most of the time, I don't run this on the plate carrier just because I don't need all that. And I don't usually actually run it fully like built out as far as like 4 mags, 4 pistol, 4 rifle. Usually the pistol mags get used for something else, like a flashlight or something, and then the admin pouches get used for other things. And then I'll run this to go hunting or something, just because it's easier than putting all this stuff on. And where I would do hunting in a plate carrier would be if you're hunting like wild hogs and stuff like that with multiple shooters, especially in the dark. It's real easy for inexperienced shooters to not be aware of their surroundings, and so just a little extra protection helps. But yeah, so that's scalability in a nutshell. And then depending on what you're doing, right, depending on the vehicle, right, you might have issues fitting in a vehicle with all this stuff on, so just being able to take that off really quickly and put it back on is quite nice. Moving on down to the sides here, these are the Spiritus wings. They are since discontinued. I don't know why. Spiritus bringing them back. I don't know why you would want to run the Thing one in a plate carrier sense. Like on a chest rig, it makes sense, but on a plate carrier sense, I'm like, why have all that extra material if you could just get away with just having the expanders? But I'm not sure why they did that. So on this side, this is for my radio retention. And you can see my PTT cables kind of go in there, and they're all like wrapped around the back behind there. And then on this side, it gets used mostly for holding my hydration tube carrier, but it also has been used for scaling up for additional magazines. So I'll run, you could run 2 extra M4 mags in there, and they fit just fine. And so, like, if I wanted to run a scaled down plus setup, I could run the Spiritus Microfight with 3, and then a +2 here to have 5. 1 on the belt, 1 on the gun. That's a total of 7 mags if you want to carry all that. If you want to carry even more, you can run the 4 +2 +1 on the belt +1 on the gun. That's what is that, 8 or so? And you can check the math. I'm sure you guys will let me know if I messed that up, but you can run quite a bit of magazines really quickly, really easily. Or if your job dictates it, then you can run another radio and another PTT and all that stuff. So moving on down, this is a don't judge me for my Crocs, man. They're comfortable, right? This is a Haley Strategic. What do they call this? The dangler, basically, right? I think they call it multi-mission hanger or whatever. You know what it is. But this is basically for medical, and I got my blood type and no known drug allergies on there, which I know is arguable for domestic setting if you need it, but whatever, it's there. It's extra information, doesn't hurt. So that pretty much wraps up the front of the plate bag. Let's go to the back of the plate bag here. So before I move on too far, I do want to touch on the hydration carrier. I know a lot of guys, they won't like running hydration built into the carrier. They're like, oh, I can't refill it, or oh, I don't like all that extra weight. So usually when I'm in a plate carrier, I'm usually in a plate carrier for an extended period amount of time, and I don't like to be reliant on other people. Sometimes those other people aren't available to help you out. Sometimes they are available to help you out, but it's like, do you really want to bother them because you're probably doing something else or whatever, right? So the hydration carrier itself, like the actual bladder, is a Camelback. I think it's their Antidote, whatever their military series is. I want to say it's their Antidote one, and it's compatible with a Source accessory with a little quick detach that goes on the end of the drinking tube. You can take the bite valve out and put this in, and what this little guy does is you put a water bottle in here, and then you hold this. Of course, once it's attached to here, you do this, right? And then you hold this above your head, and what it allows it to do is it allows you to refill your hydration through the drinking tube, so you don't have to take off your plate carrier. So usually I'll keep this accessible, usually in my microfight or even in the admin pouch, but somewhere I can grab it quickly. And then if I need more water, then I can just refill it. And you can look this up here and what the procedure is to refill it with. But if you're running built-in hydration to your carrier, I would highly recommend this. So that way you can conveniently refill your water without having to take everything off. It's really annoying. So you guys can kind of see that I have a quick detach system here, which we're going to talk about now. So moving to the back of the plate carrier, this is a Haley Strategic flat pack, which mostly gets used for, again, hydration carrying. Again, because of the reasons that I mentioned previously, you can't really access this stuff unless you have a buddy who's willing to help you out. So there's plenty of reviews on that stuff altogether, and just food for thought if you guys are thinking about running a hard mounted solution, that whatever you're going to have in there, you're not going to realistically access it unless you take everything off. So if you're in a high threat environment where you can't realistically take that off, or you don't have that opportunity, then keep that in mind. You're going to need a buddy to help you out. You could use this, like if you're in a threat environment and then you get to wherever you're going and you're going to set up like camp or something, then you could put some extra stuff in there. that you can access yourself, because then at that point it's lower threat, whatever. Fill in the context, fill in the tactics, wherever is applicable to you. Just think about it before you get it, and then like I said, think about scalability. Do you actually need it? Are you going to actually use it? And if you are, spend the extra money to get it. If you're not, then that's an opportunity for you that you could potentially save some money and potentially save some weight on your system, right? If you're running dedicated stuff, like say I was running 3 mags here and that's all I was ever going to run, I would run probably like a Blue Force Gear, what is it, like their 10-speed elastic jobbies or whatever. That's super lightweight. That's going to be lighter weight than that. So just think about, like, again, what you need, and if it makes sense to you. Do you need it, or is it a nice to have? And if it's a nice to have, are you going to actually use the feature, right? So coming back to the back of the carrier, that is hard mounted, right? So again, whatever I put back there, I can't get it myself unless I take my carrier off. And then in picture here, you can now see the Cummerbund, which is not a Velocity System product. This is Defense Mechanisms Quick Detach, which uses the rock buckle here, which is kind of like tubes, but it's not tubes. And I like the quick detach aspect of it because with plate carriers in general, right? So usually before I switch to the QD system, I would leave this side basically permanently attached, and then I would only swim in and out of it on one side. And you do that because it's easier to get your fine-tune adjustments if you only have to mess with one side. You have to do both sides every time. You're going to have some varying adjustments. Things are going to be a little bit different. It's just going to fit different overall. But what the QD system allows me to do, right, is I can get in and out of my plate carrier without adjusting, the actual sizing of it. If I want to adjust the sizing of it, then I can mess with it at that point, either from the front, or I could do it also in the back. Whatever your preference is, however much adjustment you need, right? This is generally your fine-tune adjustments, and those are generally your more coarse adjustments are in the back. So on the Cummerbund, again, this is the full-size Cummerbund. It's also mesh. I am running level 3 plus side armor with soft armor backers for a little bit of extra wraparound protection. You can see here, and then of course same thing on the other side. And then I have my my radio remote mount antenna, which comes back here under the flat pack and comes out up here, so you get a little bit of extra range from your radio setup. And excuse me, I really like running the quick detach system, and it's just really convenient for that. Let me think, is there anything else? Okay, so the other thing that I did want to mention here is on the back of your kit. If you're doing a lot of vehicle stuff, just think about that, because it can become uncomfortable or make it difficult for you to fit in a vehicle, depending on how much stuff you're stacking back there and then how much stuff you're stacking up here. So like on it's not a Razor, but it's whatever the Kawasaki equivalent is, right? With the little backpack setup back here, it ends up pushing me more forward towards the front of the steering wheel. And on that particular cockpit, it's a little bit tighter as it is. And so sometimes you'll have clearance issues when you're running like big rigs like that, trying to fit in vehicles, get in and out of vehicles, so on and so forth. And then overall, it's just because it's putting you further away from the seat, it's not as comfortable, unless you kind of like recline the seat, and then you get the extra space by doing that. So just food for thought. To wrap it up, right, things that I found to be kind of like successful with your plate carrier is comfortable, well-spaced shoulder straps. For me and for a lot of people, scalability with the front system of being able to run slick, scale up, scale up to a semi-slick setup, scale up to a heavy setup, basically scalability. I like having comms capability on the inside of my Cummerbund rather than the outside of my Cummerbund. Keeps everything a little bit more lower profile, keeps the radio accessible. Don't like to run the stuff back here for the reasons that we mentioned below, minimizing the back setup because of vehicle use, and because you're not going to be able to access it by yourself. You're going to need somebody's help to access it, which for most people, they're not going to have that, right? And other opportunities for success is quick detach Cummerbunds. For me, again, like I said, just you don't need to adjust so many things. It's real quick to just dial in your setup and go. And for all of the other reasons, that QD stuff is awesome. Again, depends on what you're doing. If you're going to use it, use it. If you're not, then don't spend the money on it. Right? You save money with less features that you buy. It's pretty straightforward. And aside from that, I think that pretty much wraps it up. So I think the only thing I didn't mention is the plates that I'm running in here are level 3 plus large sappy, which are 10 and a quarter by 13 and a quarter, if I recall correctly. So this will give you an idea for sizing wise how big it is. This is bigger than like your ferro rigs or well, your ferro mediums, and then your ferro larges I think are still just a smidge smaller than this. Or your same thing with your spirit is, I believe they're roughly about the same size. And so it's a little bit on the larger side. There is a little bit of excess material right here. Right, there's no plate here. The plate stops right here. So you could in theory fit an 11 by 14 in here. So this is a larger plate carrier, right? But just food for thought. Aside from that, I believe that about covers everything. So I'll go ahead and wrap up the video. We're already at 20 minutes. This is Sparta123. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What works for you? What doesn't work for you? If you found this video helpful, let me know. I tried to kind of like make this as general as possible, just because again, this wouldn't be fair to the Mayflower APC or the Velocity APC, because again, like this is little to do with the actual Mayflower APC. So Sparta123 signing out.